Hi, and welcome back to GMA Compass. I'm Daphne Aragueta. This is episode 3 of our APE series. In episode 1, we talked about the foundations of an annual program evaluation, or APE, and why it matters. And then in episode 2, we focused on gathering and organizing data. So now in episode 3, we're really going to bring everything together, and we're going to talk about how to take all that information, identify meaningful themes, complete your APE, and then develop action plans that are actually going to support program improvement. We have no financial disclosures, and any content shared by GME Compass is based on our own personal experiences in GME and reflect our personal insights. The perspectives that we share are our own, and they do not represent the views of any institution or organization that we have been or are currently affiliated with. So, by the end of this episode, you should be able to translate your data into meaningful themes, complete your APE documentation in a structured and organized way, develop clear and measurable action plans, and then most importantly, be able to apply a repeatable workflow that you can continue to use year after year. Because again, as I've been saying throughout the whole series, the APE is not just about getting it done. The goal is to create a process that's going to support continuous improvement. The APE process is about four things, really. It's about data becomes themes, themes drive action, and those actions are documented. That is the process. And honestly, once you're able to understand that framework, the APE is going to become much less overwhelming. One of the biggest mistakes that you can make is jumping directly from collecting the data right into writing the APE document. Because there's an important step there. There's an important middle step that you actually miss, which is the analysis. Your APE should not just list information, it should also explain what that information means to your program. And that's where the themes become important. So moving from an information to analysis, this is one of the most important concepts in the entire APE process because data alone does not tell the story, right? And we've said that in the previous episodes. One data point does not really explain the entire situation. Your role is to analyze the information and then identify what matters. That means looking for connections across the multiple data sources, looking for recurring concerns, trends over time, and then thinking about how those issues impact the learning environment. A common mistake in the APE is data dumping. Programs include pages and pages of information, but there's very little interpretation or analysis. And again, the ACGME is not looking for volume. What they're looking for is a thoughtful evaluation and continuous improvement process. Once your data is organized, the next step is identifying themes. You want to look for trends over time. You want to look for repeated concerns. You also want to look for patterns or confirm the patterns across multiple sources. And that is important. A single comment or an isolated concern does not automatically become a theme. Themes are typically supported by multiple pieces of information. So, for example, your survey data, comments on your evaluations, discussions that you've had or that faculty discussions, excuse me, trends that appear consistently over time. And this is where your analysis begins to shape the direction of your APE. So let's look at a simple example. And maybe a resident survey shows a decrease in satisfaction with feedback. Then you review the evaluations and you notice that residents are also commenting on delayed and inconsistent feedback. Now we're starting to see a pattern that becomes the theme, not just feedback, but potentially that the structure, consistency, or effectiveness of the feedback process within the program needs improvement. And once you identify the theme, then that helps you guide your action plan. And this is what moves your APE to just be on reporting the data. One of the most important parts of the APE process is reviewing your prior action plans. And the reason why you want to do that is because you want to see what issues were previously identified, what interventions were done or implemented, was there improvement, and what work still needs to be done. Because the ACGME again is not expecting perfection. What they are expecting is follow through. They want to see that programs are identifying the issues, that you're developing action plans, that you're monitoring your progress, and then that you're also reassessing your outcomes over time. And again, this is what the continuous improvement process looks like. And this is also where, honestly, where strong documentation becomes really, really important. So writing your APE. Your APE document should be clear and structured. It should include summary of your findings, the themes identified from your data, and your action plans. Again, this is not about volume. It's about clarity, alignment, and demonstrating your process. So the ACGME does provide an APE template that the programs can use as a guide. And the template includes sections such as it includes sections for your data sources. It gives you evaluation parameters. It also gives you key findings and also action plans or a template for action plans. But it's really important to remember that this is just a suggested framework. Many institutions have their own required form or processes. So always make sure that you understand what your institutional expectations are in addition to what the ACGME requirement is. That is the important part, not the exact format. The important part is demonstrating again that you have a structured and meaningful evaluation process. So, action plans are one of those important parts of the APE. This is where programs move from identifying issues to implementing improvement strategies. Strong action plans should be specific, measurable, realistic and achievable, time bound, and trackable. So, same as SMART goals. If your action plan is too vague, then it's going to become difficult to implement or to reassess at a later time. Your future APE should be able to revisit these plans and then evaluate the progress. So, let's compare some action plans examples. A weak action plan might say something as improve feedback, but it's not telling us the how, the when, the who is responsible, and how success is going to be measured. A stronger action plan might say implement structured faculty feedback training by Q2 with a follow up evaluation during the next resident survey cycle. So now we have a specific intervention, we have a timeline, and then we also have measurable reassessment strategy. And then that's what's going to make your action plan meaningful. Let's look at another example using resident wellness. A weak action plan might say something like improve resident wellness. But again, that doesn't tell us what interventions are going to happen, what progress or how progress is going to be monitored, or when reassessment is going to happen. A stronger action plan might say implement quarterly wellness check ins beginning the first quarter, review workload concerns during the PEC meetings, and then reassess wellness survey trends in the next 6 months. Now that action plan again is specific, it's measurable, and it's trackable over time. And most importantly, it's going to create accountability and follow through. As I mentioned, the ACGME also provides a suggested action plan tracking tool. This helps programs monitor improvement efforts over multiple years. So it includes the identified issues, planned interventions, responsible individuals, a timeline, expected outcomes, and the current status. And honestly, this is one of the most valuable tools that programs can use. How do we connect the APE to accreditation, aside from it being a requirement? The work completed during your APE connects directly to the broader accreditation strategy. This is not just an internal document or an annual requirement. The themes, action plans, outcomes identified during the APE often support updates that you enter into ADS, and they help demonstrate how the program evaluates itself over time. It also helps programs identify priorities and areas requiring continuous focus. And this is, again, where the strong documentation and follow through really come in clutch and are incredibly important. Programs should be able to demonstrate not only that the issues were identified, but also how they responded, what action plans were implemented, and whether improvement occurred. This is what, again, continuous improvement looks like in practice. When we take a step back and look at the entire APE process, this is really the full workflow from the beginning to end. It starts with gathering and organizing your data. This may include resident and faculty surveys, board past performance, case logs, milestone data, recruitment information, evaluation trends, or, sometimes you might use some institutional metrics as well. And once this data is organized, the next step is to analyze it. This is where you begin reviewing for your trends, recurring concerns, strengths, and patterns that appear across multiple sources. Those patterns are what going to help you identify meaningful themes. And then those themes are going to, again, guide your action plans. From there, programs implement improvement strategies, you monitor progress, and then you reassess outcomes over time. And then one of the most important things to remember is that the APE is not meant to be a one-time task. That was the very first thing that we established in episode 1. The APE should function as a continuous improvement process that helps guide programs' evaluation decisions throughout the year. The strongest programs are not the ones that simply complete the APE. They are the programs that are consistently using the process to evaluate performance and identify opportunities and then drive meaningful improvement throughout the year. To bring everything together, here's the final APE checklist. By this stage, you should have reviewed your ACGME and specialty specific requirements. You should have gathered and organized your required data. Summary, remember, not raw data. Identify meaningful trends and themes from that data that you organized. Review prior action plans and reassess progress. Develop the measurable and realistic action plans. Prepared for your PEC discussion, and then completed your documentation and follow-up process. If you can confidently work through those steps, you have created a strong and effective APE process. Again, not just for compliance, but for the meaningful program improvement. So as we close this episode, here are the major takeaways I want you to remember. First, the APE is not simply an annual form or compliance exercise. It is a continuous improvement process designed to help programs elevate performance, identify opportunities, and drive meaningful change over time. Second, data alone is not enough. The goal is not just collecting information, but also analyzing it in a way that's going to help tell the story of your program and where it stands. That analysis is going to also help identify meaningful themes. And then again, those themes are going to drive or guide your action plans. And then finally, strong action plans, they require follow through. Programs should be able to demonstrate not only what was identified, but what actions were implemented and how the progress was monitored and whether the improvement actually occurred. And clarity matters far more than volume. I think that has also been the theme of these 8 series. A strong APE is thoughtful, it's organized, and then it demonstrates a clear process for continuous improvement. In our final episode, we're going to discuss what happens after the APE is submitted and how programs can use that process to support continuous improvement beyond compliance. And we'd love to hear from you. What part of completing the APE or developing action plans do you find the most challenging? Is it identifying meaningful themes and trends? Is it writing measurable action plans? Tracking improvement over time? Turning data into meaningful analysis? Whichever one it is, drop your thoughts or questions in the comments below. And I look forward to catching you at the last episode of this APE series. Thank you.